Hello, Dion Hinchcliffe here, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, covering future of work and CIO topics.
And I'm Doug Henschen, Vice President and Principal Analyst, covering data to decisions. And we're your co-hosts for episode 75 of CRTV.
That's right. CRTV is your show for news, trends, innovations in enterprise tech. And hey, Doug, I think this 75 makes it the platinum episode, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Great anniversary. In this episode, following the news, we're going to share Dion's interview with Zoho customer Keith Cooper of Bergen Logistics. And that was recorded at the recent Zoho Day event in McAllen, Texas, where we all had fun and lots of barbecue.
Yeah, that was amazing. I had more brisket and I could shake a stick at. And in our final segment, Doug shares a primer on integration platform as a service, or iPaaS. It's a topic I'm also very interested in because that's how digital transformation is actually going to happen in many organizations as a foundational tool. And the latest trends in that space. But first, let's get to the news.
As usual, we're joined by Larry Dignan, Editor-in-Chief of Constellation Research Insights, which provides a daily stream of news coverage. Larry's super prolific, also puts out a weekly newsletter, which you should all subscribe to. Larry, what's the latest?
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I'd like to boil it down to Broadcom earnings, because it's a fascinating thing that's going on here. They're going to report earnings, and Broadcom also makes chips, and there's an AI play, and so theoretically, like, they should be yapping about AI and their chips and all that good stuff and just kind of rocking it. Instead, my hunch is they're going to spend at least half the time talking about VMware, the transition to their subscription business model. And they'll probably dance around a lot of questions because VMware customers are visibly annoyed right now. And this came up on a company called Nutanix, who they reported earnings, and I would venture to say 70% of the call was about VMware disgruntled customers and how they're looking at Nutanix to kick the tires, build the pipeline, and basically jump ship. So my guess is we're going to run into this call and it's going to be, hey, let's talk about AI. And all the analysts are going to be like, hey, let's talk about VMware. And for those who, aren't familiar with the backstory, Broadcom bought VMware and they focused it on the Cloud Foundations software. And they basically got rid of a lot of the SKUs and are forcing you to buy a bundle under a subscription model where a lot of folks had licensing models. And then they sold their end user group last week to, I think it was KKR. So it's just a lot of wheeling and dealing. They're simplifying, the go-to-market stuff. But if you're a customer, you don't like pricing changes because it usually spells bad news for you. Yeah. And we've heard this. We had a conference call with the BT150 folks on the Constellation Research side. Those CIOs weren't pleased. And it's just bubbling up everywhere. So I'll be very interested just to see, is there any financial data indicating that folks are jumping ship? It's an interesting play because they're, these customers are kind of locked in.
Well, and that is the issue is, so we've heard this, Larry, as you mentioned, we had this in our monthly call with the CIOs, and we've seen this consistently now that VMware is now perceived as milking their legacy as hard as anyone ever has. Basically, and it's causing a lot of pain because it's very hard to extricate yourself once you've built your entire IT infrastructure around VMware. It can be done, but it doesn't happen overnight, and that's the challenge. So you have to feel the pain now, but everyone's looking at alternatives, I think. And is it just a Nutanix? Is it, they seem to have the lead in terms of the option, the escape pod, if you will. But it's going to be one to watch for sure. It's an opportunity.
A fresh reminder that it always comes down to money. It's,
right.
It's really the cost of licenses and keeping that IT investment alive. And you can't fly in the face of that with customers. They're going to walk.
And Nutanix is doing, promotions. They're incentivizing partners. They have an easy way to jump ship. with services and things like that. And their product does line up pretty well with cloud foundations. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. But like Dion said, it's, this is probably a 2-3 year story to see how it actually plays out, because some of these folks sign enterprise licenses that last a couple of years, like right before the deal closed. So, this is sort of like, it could be a slow-mo train wreck to watch.
Yeah, well, it clearly Broadcom cares more about the short-term gain than the long-term customer loyalty. So what does that say, Larry? I don't know. It indicates that they have bigger plans.
Yeah, well, they also own CA, right? So this is sort of their MO. It's get you kind of locked in a bit, and
so as a playbook, that's what they know, right? That's what they do.
Yeah, and then milk it. So good stuff. Unless you're Broadcom.
Yeah, or their customers.
Right.
So for my news item, I have taken a deep kind of a survey. I'll have some research coming out about this around AI regulation. Notably, this week in India, the AI regulatory agency, it is not really dedicated just to AI, but they made it required that larger companies, those who are putting out significant services using artificial intelligence, must not just register their models, but get them approved first to make sure they have no bias and they won't cause harm. And this is just one of many signals for AI regulation that are occurring around the world. The EU just in December approved their AI regulation. It's not law yet, and it has been ratified by the EU countries, but it's expected to be. And it divides AI into 3 levels of safety, and you'll have to register it with the EU if you're one of the 2 of the 3 levels of AI. We have our own AI executive order in the United States. There's only a single one, but most of its provisions haven't gone into effect. There's 30 that will come into effect in April. The most significant one meaning that if you have a dual-use AI model that can do good, but also can create misinformation or do harm, that you have to register it with the Department of Commerce. That's all you have to do right now. There are other more minor provisions that will go into force, but the biggest one is that we're also going to require registration of significant models that have dual use in the United States. And China, interestingly enough, is behind them all. They are still working on their comprehensive AI regulation that is expected to really focus on national security, focus on the moral code of the Chinese government and what they'd like to see happen. And so it's expected to be comprehensive and very significant. And the real challenge, of course, of regulation is if you turn the dial too high, you're really going to kill innovation. And AI is broadly considered to be an extremely powerful technology that's going to deliver a lot of the things we were always hoping that technology would deliver. But it has it's a two-edged sword, like all technology, but since it's so powerful, there's many potential downsides. So regulations are all on the way. They're all coming. And that's basically the roundup from the major countries. There's also lots of more regional regulations. So if you're going to get into the business, you're going to have to deal with this tapestry of different regulations, different registrations, and potentially, the impact to your business as the regulations presumably will get more complicated and tightened. So it's going to be interesting to watch. United States, we have so far the least impactful regime, and that will most likely, since we're in the lead in AI right now, that will most likely hold us in good stead. But we'll see. A lot of these things will really kick in over the next 2 years, and it'll be one to watch. So CIOs and IT departments that are looking to roll out, especially if they're rolling out services that will be broadly used by the public, will have to watch these very closely. And it's good to get your AI framework and foundation in place so that you can enforce policy and regulation consistently across your entire company. That's my recommendation, to be focusing on that right now so you can get ready for these things.
Is that focused on large companies? I mean, I'm just thinking like in the US context, right? Like Google, obviously the government's interested. Meta, yes. Amazon, yes. Anthropic? They just came out with Claude 3. It looks pretty sharp.
As far as I can read in our AI executive order, the company size isn't taken into account. If you have what's considered a powerful dual-use AI model, you just have to register it with the Department of Commerce. That's all they're requiring, not approval, just registration.
Well, good luck with these government agencies, discerning whether a model has bias and has risks. I mean,
oh wait, no, it's a Pandora's box, and I don't know what they're going to. Regulation of tech has always been very hard because the tech goes far out ahead of the regulation, and it can be gamed. Like in India, it only really applies to large companies. So all the big Indian services companies with AI, because they've heavily invested, are going to move all that IP into startups and license it, right? And then there's, you be careful what you wish for, because you're basically people just model their way around your regulations.
Well, you also don't know how these models do until humans start screwing with them.
Yeah.
Like when they get out in the wild, that's where you start asking them wacky questions and create memes, right? It's not in the lab.
Now they have these cross AI worms. Some researcher just created a worm that makes two AIs talk to each other and extract information from each other, right? So it's that kind of stuff that's going to happen.
Right.
Well, from my side of things, people are still talking about last week's surprise resignation of Snowflake CEO Frank Slootman and his immediate replacement by Sridhar Ramaswamy, a Google veteran and the CEO of an AI startup called Neeva that got acquired by Snowflake last year. And I've heard lots of speculation about what was behind the scenes with that move. But I think you have to take what Slootman said at face value, which, as reported by Larry in his Inside Story, was that, quote, with the onslaught of generative AI, Snowflake needs a hard-driving technologist to navigate the challenges of this new world. So to me, it was obvious that Snowflake needed a bigger and a better AI story to the market. It was obvious. So perhaps in an effort to shift the discussion as quickly as possible, Snowflake on March 4 made an announcement about a new partnership with Mistral AI, the European LLM company. As part of that deal, Mistral Large, that vendor's new top-tier model, will be made available as part of Snowflake Cortex, which is the managed LLM and vector search service, which Ramaswamy helped spearhead the development, that Neeva was part of the acquisition to spark the development of Snowflake's AI offering. Now, Mistral Large is said to outperform Anthropic Claude 2 and Google Gemini Pro. Snowflake will also offer Mistral 8x7b, which is an open source LLM said to outperform OpenAI's GPT 3.5. And they're also going to offer Mistral 7b, which is an LLM optimized for low latency, low memory requirements, and high throughput. And also part of this deal, Snowflake Ventures will be investing in Mistral. So, this deal was likely in the works already. I think getting it out of the door quickly this week is part of the effort to change the narrative. Snowflake stock really got hammered last week. To my mind, Snowflake is leaning very heavily on partners and Snowpark to tell its AI story. That's not going to be enough. It's going to really have to show that the Snowflake data cloud is capable and cost-effective, a place to be developing and delivering AI and AI apps. So, folks, any thoughts on that, Larry and Dion?
Yeah, it's interesting. If my inbox is any indication, there's just an endless onslaught of AI licensing, because to get into the game requires a very significant investment, and so it's easier to get in really quickly by signing up the right partners. I think Mistral is a terrific model. It's getting a lot of attention right now. It's probably the right move for Snowflake, but I have to wonder if those who didn't make the big investment 2 years ago are ultimately going to miss the boat because they don't have their own AI models.
Yeah, I'm looking at it more from a business side. Like, I kind of like the CEO swap. Like, I think it's pretty well timed because it is, like, if you look at Slootman's history, he kind of comes in, like, sets up the operations, and then when it has to become engineering driven or whatever, like, he has a history of really good handoffs. Like, the handoff to McDermott. When he took over from Bob Mugla. And then who was the other one? And then he was at, Dimension Data, I think it was, that was acquired by. So he's he has a knack for knowing when these transitions need to occur.
Well, I mean, he has a knack for spearheading great IPOs. So I think that the handoff could have been sooner, because it was very evident last year when Snowflake Summit and Databricks Data and AI Summit were back to back.
Right.
That Databricks was so much better prepared and better positioned for the coming of Gen AI and everything AI.
And Snowflake stuff is still on the runway.
Yeah.
Like, it's still private beta, or it's not GA yet. So another issue.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's news summary. Stay tuned for Dion's interview with Zoho customer Bergen Logistics, followed by my discussion with Larry and an analysis and talk on the trends and capabilities in integration platform as a service.
Hello, this is Dion Hinchcliffe, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, and I have with me a very special guest, Keith Cooper. Welcome, Keith.
Hi, Dion. Thank you.
So we were talking before the camera about the journey of Bergen Logistics, who you work for. I was wondering if you could walk us through a little bit about yourself and about what your company does.
Very good. Thank you. Keith Cooper. I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience at Bergen Logistics. Bergen Logistics is a third-party logistics company serving primarily the high-end fashion and lifestyle brands around the world. 5 years ago, I started at Bergen Logistics and realized that we weren't doing a good job of keeping track of the opportunities and the leads that were coming in. So went to market for a CRM. As I found Zoho with some of the other competitors, I started lining them up together and realized that the value proposition that Zoho offered was equal to or better than everyone else at a better price.
Features per cost type of thing?
Exactly. It did everything that anyone else's did, and the value was just much greater. So we made the decision to go with Zoho for our CRM. Shortly thereafter, we realized we needed a tracking system for our client services team because we weren't doing a good job of keeping track and developing data, developing KPIs on how quickly we were responding to our clients' requests and how quickly we were resolving them. So we added Zoho Desk. That was another 50 licenses, and that was very successful and has helped us greatly improve on our service delivery to our clients. Through the acquisition of those two platforms, we saw that there were other Zoho solutions available that would help us with the analytics, help us with some of our business processes. So we added forms, we added survey, we added analytics, and with the growing amount of applications that Zoho had available, we saw that the Zoho One license would very quickly did become our better solution. So we've been on Zoho One now for 2 years, and we've got 250 users in our organization.
Interesting. So the business situation was you had leads coming into the organization. They weren't being tracked consistently, and you really saw a solution to make that easier. And then over time, you ended up growing the suite of applications to handle more of the customer journey. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
So Keith, can you walk us through the beginning of the journey with the CRM product, customer relationship management? Most people are familiar with the tools, but how was the Zoho onboarding experience?
Oh, that's a great question. What we looked at when we brought it in is whether or not we should hire an outside consultancy to come in and do the implementation. What we looked at is whether or not we needed to bring an outside company in to do the installation and help us determine what our business processes should be. We had a pretty good idea of what the processes should be, but weren't sure how we would do the implementation. And we just got our hands dirty. We dug in, we opened up the hood, started checking the air in the tires, and found that it was fairly straightforward to do DIY. And that's what we ended up doing. Since that time, there were some applications and there were some processes that we did bring a consultant in and found that the way we had set things up was pretty much what they would have done. So, yay, that was a victory for us.
Well, but it says a lot about the product specifically, though. You were able to take it and really install it. It's cloud, right? You bring it in, you hand out logins to everybody.
Exactly.
But then when you guys try to actually use it and roll it out, it was so easy to do that you were able to forego consultants or professional services for, it sounds like.
Yeah, we have, and we've continued to develop our expertise. We have a homegrown warehouse management system, a WMS that we use. So we have a group of developers and we have a group of support personnel that have now adopted and are doing the care and feeding for us of the application stack. But we've just really helped Bergen drive success through the metrics, through the applications, through the systems we've been able to create using the Zoho applications. We more than tripled our annual sales production. We've improved our time to respond and our time to resolve by 100-fold using the application.
You're talking about since the introduction of Zoho products?
Correct, since we started using Zoho. Now, 2 years ago, Elanders, which is a Swedish-based 3PL company, bought Bergen.
3PL is?
Third-party logistics. What we're finding is that they're looking at adopting many of the practices that we've established. So now we have a globalization of the Zoho applications throughout many of the Elanders companies that we work with as well.
Yeah, if you were on the enterprise side of things, we call that a center of excellence that you're establishing there, and that's great news. And so you began to have success with CRM. It was being rolled out to your sales team, sounds like.
Yep.
How was the management aspect of it? It sounds like at some point you decided you needed analytics on top of that to get a handle on what was flowing through the CRM system. What was the journey there?
Right. So I'm in a fortunate position that I'm able to tie together all of the marketing and the sales activity. So as marketing is out generating leads and feel like they're doing a good job of it, sales often looks at the leads and says, yeah, well, these aren't the Glengarry leads that we're looking for.
Right.
So we built the, I call it the machine, that we figured out our metrics of both volume and velocity all the way through our sales funnel. So we've learned in order to get how much honey out of the bottom, how much hive do we need to put on the top? So those metrics have served us very well over the last few years as we've been much better at forecasting, been much better at managing the funnel, and much better at creating success through the organization. What I mean by that is when we look at the different salespeople, and if somebody may not be hitting their numbers, we can look at each part of the journey that they're bringing their leads through and then see, analyze where it may be broken, whether it's their time to respond, their time to convert the lead, their time to get the information. So we can just find that place where maybe they're not performing the same as their peers are, and then coach and counsel them.
Yeah, this really helps them. It's an aid for you and for them.
Very much so.
And so, we talk about in the industry, master KPIs like cost to acquire a customer. Do you guys manage at that level of it?
Oh yeah. So we know, we manage our lifetime value of a customer. We know what our using the systems, we know what our customer acquisition costs. So we know what a minimum size deal needs to be in order to support everything that goes into winning a customer. We know what our profitability is, so we can figure out pretty quickly what's the value proposition going to be for a client and what we bring. Bergen Logistics is not the lowest cost provider in our space, so we have to make sure that we're helping our clients understand the value proposition. So by managing the sales process through the CRM, we're able to do that.
And to a lot of people, the whole practice of customer experience is still kind of hard for them to grasp and to understand, and it really encompasses that whole journey. And so, but it sounds like the Zoho suite allowed you to really crystallize the entire process, make it transparent and visible to not only the sales team, but to the executives you report to. Those executives that you reported to, did they witness kind of this transformation of the organization when the CRM was brought in? For sure. And I'm a sales and marketing, heavy on the marketing side. So I would often walk into my boss's office, well, I feel like this might be the right thing to do. He's very much data driven, right? And so I knew I needed to have the level of data to support my concepts and my hypotheses. Now we have the data not only to support them on the front end, but to prove them either right or wrong on the back end. So it's been the sales organization and the marketing organization realize that we have an excellent data stack
that shows the value that we bring and shows what we would need to bring more.
All right. Well, Keith, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and sharing the story today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Dignan with CRTV, and we're here with Constellation analyst Doug Henschen, and we're going to talk about what is an iPaaS and everything you need to know. Hi, Doug. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Larry. You know, I've been at Constellation for nearly 9 years now. My research domain is data to decisions. So that's really the path from raw data to insights and actions, and really it usually starts with integration, whether it's databases or applications or mission critical systems. It's about connecting those sources to the targets, and increasingly it's about data coming back again to drive AI or to drive automation.
So let's just start with the basics. What is an iPaaS? I mean, everyone seems to know SaaS and infrastructure as a service, and it always seems like it's, hey, SaaS infrastructure, and then, oh yeah, there's this iPaaS thing off to the side. Yeah. It's kind of like the stepchild of the two.
Well, there's platform as a service, and there's lots of types of platform as a service. This is an integration platform as a service that's accessed and managed in the cloud. And so in this case, the iPaaS, instead of creating and managing these brittle, hard-coded point-to-point integrations between data sources and apps or apps and other apps, you're using out-of-the-box connectors from this iPaaS platform. Usually they've got plenty of connectors for apps and data sources, and then you connect to that platform, and then you connect from the platform back out to other apps and data platforms. So really the iPaaS becomes this consistent intermediary between all points of integration. So then you end up doing most of your integration work by pointing and clicking or dragging and dropping. You're using a visual integration interface. It's kind of a low-code, no-code experience to do the connections between the data and the apps, or the apps and the apps. And it really speeds up all that integration work, scales up, it leads to more productivity because you're not coding everything.
And how does this set you up for the future?
Well, with iPaaS, you're better prepared for change. The vendors keep this iPaaS up to date, including all those connectors to popular apps and data sources, and those are constantly changing, so the vendor's taking care of that. And you can reuse all the connections and integrations you set up for your own apps and data sources. So as you need more integrations, you can reuse those integration components you've created. And when needs change or you introduce new apps or data sources, it's a simple matter of adding or changing the connectors, tweaking the APIs, the mappings, the configurations, and you can do it once for each app or data source, and then the changes are applied across all those integrations that you've already done.
So what are some of the more strategic, cutting edge things you're seeing in the iPaaS market?
Well, definitely, what we call the next generation iPaaS, and what we see emerging are three things: API management capabilities, workflow and automation capabilities, and augmented AI capabilities, including this emerging collection of generative AI capabilities. So on the API front, in the cloud, it's all about APIs because they abstract the complexity, they promote the agility, the flexibility. Now, unfortunately, they also introduce a new source of complexity in the form of API sprawl. So the leading iPaaS vendors are amping up their API management capabilities. I'm talking about lifecycle management, unified control planes to wrangle all those APIs, governance frameworks to ensure that the APIs are tracked and managed for efficiency and security. On workflow and automation, and we still have a lot of talent shortages. Companies are being pressed to do more with fewer people. During the pandemic in particular, we saw a lot more workflow capabilities introduced to iPaaS, and the idea is to create repeatable processes that can be automated wherever possible. Now, in AI and ML, iPaaS is a cloud-based platform, so vendors have started to learn from the data exhaust. I'm not talking about the private data that you're connecting. I'm talking about the metadata behind all those integration patterns on this cloud-based platform. So for the last few years, we've started to see iPaaS that can suggest the next best integration steps. If you pick an app or a data source, it's already showing you frequent integration patterns and the existing integrations that exist. So you're not recreating things that already exist. So the iPaaS are getting smarter. And the latest advance with AI is this generative AI. It's going to be used to help design, deploy, explain, and document integrations. And it's going to help to democratize these iPaaS because you're going to have these natural language interfaces. So tech savvy, line of business people, process owners who aren't integration professionals are going to be able to develop and deploy new integrations and workflows just by describing what they want. Now, all of these Gen AI capabilities will also be used by the IT and integration professionals. And in their case, it's accelerating their work, scaling up their productivity, helping them to monitor, maintain, and modify integrations. It'll enable them to vet the Gen AI-based integration work done by this new class of tech-savvy line of business user or process owner. It'll scale up and accelerate their transformation work because it'll help with explaining legacy integrations and code that's been around and the people that created that code left long ago. But the Gen AI can sort of explain those integrations and help document integrations.
So what are the use cases for iPaaS today, and how do you see that evolving given the generative AI and the other, I guess, the democratization?
Well, integration is all over the place. So the use cases for integration are infinite. And any company that has a lot of integration work wants to use an iPaaS to gain that, productivity, scalability. When it comes to workflow and process automation, a lot of processes we see are e-commerce processes, supply chain, order to cash, B2B partner integration, onboarding, whether it's employee or customer onboarding. Again, you're looking for repeatability, productivity, automation.
What are some of the recommendations you have for looking at a iPaaS vendor?
Well, I would look for what we call a next generation iPaaS. That means it's complete. You should be able to consolidate on one industry, one company standard iPaaS for your company. If you can do it all with one platform, you'll get much more out of that investment, both in terms of the technology investment and the training for your people. That familiarity builds. The more familiar they are with the iPaaS, the more routine and capable they are in cranking out new integrations. So what does complete mean? I think the first bit of advice is to look beyond just the next project. That's often a catalyst for an integration investment, but you should really think beyond that next project to the breadth of your integration needs. Do you have on-premises integration needs? Are you working on multiple public clouds? Are there major tech investments in the wings, like a new ERP or CRM system? What is your interest in doing workflow and automation? You want to look at all these things. You want to consider maybe mergers and acquisitions changing your needs or the scale of the integration work that you're doing. And if you want to be forward-looking, you got to look at the AI and Gen AI capabilities. A lot of these platforms are also addressing streaming integration, so low latency systems and platforms like Kafka and Kinesis. So the next question after, what you'll need to integrate is who will do the work. And is it strictly IT and integration professionals today? A lot of these iPaaS are coming with low-code, no-code capabilities, Gen AI. All of the above will influence, which iPaaS you want to choose, what type of people will use that platform, and then the pricing models that might work best.
What are some of the gotchas to look for?
Well, again, you want the completeness of the iPaaS, but also modularity. So you can, if you don't need all those capabilities, but you just want to keep in mind that you want a platform that will take you there when you need to get there, you want to be able to add capabilities as needed. So you're not paying for them until you're using them. You want to look at the subscription models. Is it per user, per connection, per workflow? Is it capacity based? It's a best, in our view, if the vendor gives you a range of options and they worry about what works for them, you have to worry about what works for you, the pricing option that works for your level of integration, the type of integration work, the numbers of users you're going to have, and et cetera.
Yeah, so I imagine there are times where if you did by connection, it's one thing, and then if you're doing it by capacity or traffic going back and forth between apps, I guess it's kind of like the cloud, right? The bill could add up pretty quickly. Yes,
and it could change over time. And the model that works for you today might change as your number of integrations scale up, and that's often a gotcha. People start with the initial project, they're thrilled, it's great, but then as the integrations multiply and they're paying by integration or paying by workflow, then the bill can add up very quickly.
So I guess the last question, we have our Constellation shortlist. What are some of the vendors that you've looked at that you think are worth a look?
Well, I think you should go to our shortlist. All iPaaS are cloud-based, but on-prem capabilities, multi-cloud capabilities, these sorts of things are uneven. I think if you look at our shortlist at constellationr.com/shortlist, you'll see I have a lot of independent platforms. They tend to be more app, a data source, and cloud agnostic. But you really have to match the platform to your specific needs. If you're all in one cloud, maybe one of those choices would make more sense. So do your research, get feedback from would-be users, and by all means, we recommend that you do proof of concept projects or maybe several projects with the breadth of integration types needs that you want to address.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, and I look forward to reading the iPaaS research you'll be throwing out.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
Well, that's a wrap for episode 75 of CRTV. Get set for a new episode coming up in 2 weeks.
That's right. Watch for co-hosts Holger Mueller and Liz Miller, who will be bringing you episode 76 of CRTV. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at CRTV_show, at our website, ConstellationR.com. You can subscribe to Constellation Research on YouTube and also visit ConstellationR.com/blogs to subscribe to Larry Dignan's weekly Constellation Insights newsletter.
Thanks for watching and have a great rest of the week.
Hello.
Hello.
Why are you avoiding meat?
Well, Holger is rubbed off on me.
Oh, I see, you're going vegan.
Well, I had fish last night. I'm probably going to eat fish and chicken when necessary by cutting way down, if not completely out on red meat. And I don't know if I'll go as whole hog as Holger with, no absolutely no oil either. That's like really hard to do. Little less headroom, Dion.
All right, are we ready to rock and roll?
Don't forget the one shots. And I'm Doug Henschen, Vice President and Principal Analyst covering data. Okay, so I crashed during the middle of that news thing.
I'll have the easy one now. Okay.
I switch it every other week.
Yeah, no, I like it.